Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Innocent Until Proven Guilty. This will be Part 12, Chapters 12 and 13. Chapter 12, New Spaces. Toshinori would never consider himself to be a prideful person. He loved being a hero, helping others, and doing good. But at the end of the day, he didn't believe that made him any better than anyone else, so pride wasn't something he had much experience with. But he was proud. Proud of his successor, of young Izuku. Despite the rumors Class 1A had been festering recently, Toshinori knew the boy enough to know he was a hero through and through. He watched him today, walk off with Aizawa, without hesitation to submit to an interrogation which had been extremely difficult to be left out of, by the way. Still, Toshinori wanted nothing more than to have helped his successor, stayed by his side to support him. But since he couldn't be there, he was glad to know Aizawa was. From what he has seen, the man cares an awful lot about his students, despite his efforts to hide it behind his cold exterior. Toshinori picked up the last few items from his successor's dorm. When Nedzu had called earlier to ask if he could move Izuku's things, he had said yes without hesitation. Truth be told, he had been grateful for the chance to help the boy today in some way. Turning off the light, Toshinori then closed the door to Izuku's old dorm with finality and made his way upstairs. After receiving the message from Nedzu, Izuku shared it with the others. They all collectively agreed that Izuku should go see who it was and work on unpacking things to get settled in. Shoto insisted on going with him to help out. Stepping out into the hall from Aizawa-sensei and Yamada-sensei's apartment, Izuku saw how the door to his was wide open and a light was on. Shoto had kept by his side as they gravitated into the hallway, and the two of them made eye contact briefly, before exchanging small nods and continuing on. Stepping across the threshold, Izuku got a first glimpse of where he will be living. He froze, taking in the view, and how it was a mirror image to the other apartment. A nice-sized living room greeted him first with a couch that looked just as comfortable as the ones across the hall, as well as a few chairs. An empty bookshelf was nestled into a corner that he couldn't wait to fill, if he was being honest. The rest of what he could see was boxes of, presumably, his own things from downstairs, and a small kitchen that he was immensely grateful for. No need to force myself through meals with the rest of the class. A rustling sound was heard from what seemed to be the bedroom. Before Izuku or Shoto could investigate, footsteps started making their way toward them, and he caught a glimpse of who it was.
"Young Midoriya, it's good to see you. What do you think of your new home?" his mentor asked, smiling wide and gesturing with both his arms to the entire space. After the initial shock of seeing All Might in his new living quarters, the man insisted on giving a tour to both him and Shoto. Izuku's mind had been racing the whole time the man spoke, and he barely registered what was going on until Shoto placed a hand on his shoulder. "Are you all right, Izuku?" he asked softly, his words pulling Izuku's eyes to meet his. Izuku swallowed, anxious over how to tell his mentor, the man who gave him a quirk and believed he could be a hero, that he shared the secret of One for All. Izuku knew that telling Aizawa-sensei was something he couldn't control, that he was happy about it even. He can't imagine his mentor being upset with him for that. But what about telling the others? Or how the whole class learned he was quirkless? Izuku nodded in response to Shoto, unable to speak. Shoto frowned at him, concern evident in his features. Izuku wished he could reassure him right now, but his anxiety had the control, his breathing becoming shallow, and his thoughts refusing to slow down. A chime sounded in the space that momentarily halted Izuku's spiral as he watched his mentor take out his phone. All Might's eyes widened at what he read, and his gaze flickered to Izuku. He stopped breathing. Does he know? He looks like he knows. Does he think I'm untrustworthy now? His successor couldn't even keep one secret. Is he going to ask for it back? No, he's All Might. He wouldn't do that. Right? Right? All Might's eyes softened, and he took a step closer. Izuku grabbed Shoto's hand on reflex. All Might paused, noticing his reaction, and frowned. My boy, he started, and Izuku just couldn't look at him anymore, ashamed at having failed him, eyes dropping to the floor. He couldn't listen to All Might say how disappointed he was. He knew that's what he was going to say. He needed to apologize, try to make things right. My boy, I'm sorry, Izuku blurted out, cutting the man off. I'm so sorry. Shoto squeezed Izuku's hand, offering support and comfort. There's nothing to be sorry for, young Izuku. Nothing at all. Izuku's gaze shot up at that, shock evident on his face. What? His voice was hoarse and disbelieving. All Might merely smiled at him and spoke calmly. There's nothing to be sorry for. But your secret, Izuku began. Not my secret, no. It belongs to you. And I sincerely apologize for ever making you feel as though it wasn't yours to do with as you wish. The man spoke with sincerity, and Izuku couldn't believe his ears. I thought you'd be mad at me, Izuku whispered out, eyes stinging. Before he could continue speaking, his hand was forced to release Shoto's as he found himself suddenly enveloped in a warm embrace. Izuku's arms held tight to the first adult to truly believe in him, to see he had potential. I could never be mad at you, my boy. Not when I am so very proud of you, Yagi said softly. Shoto and Izuku were now working together to unpack the boxes in the apartment. Izuku felt a lot better now that Yagi had been here to talk through everything that happened. After his freak-out and some reassurances from his mentor, the man could tell that Izuku needed space to settle in and rest. So he had stayed a few more minutes before heading out and leaving he and Shoto to it. It was peaceful, just the two of them. They worked well together, seemingly knowing what the other needed without words needing to be spoken. His friend also knew Izuku well enough to be able to tell where he would want things to be. The time they spent unpacking was filled with calmness, whispered words, and small smiles shared between them. Then, before they knew it, they were done and settling onto the couch next to one another for a much-needed break. Izuku could feel Shoto's eyes on him, and he turned to meet his gaze. Thank you for being here for me, Shoto. I never really did thank you for staying by my side through all this. Shoto just smiled warmly, and that warmth filled Izuku's chest. Glancing around the new space he'd been living, he realized no part of him wanted Shoto to leave. Hey, Shoto, he asked quietly, shifting his eyes to his lap. Yes? Come on, Izuku, just ask him. Would you, His face was beginning to heat up. Just ask him to stay. Would you mind staying here tonight? He rushed out. He doubted Shoto even understood what he said. Izuku could feel his heart beating fast, and his face had to be on fire at this point. Through it all, Izuku heard Shoto's sharp intake of breath. I would love to stay with you, Izuku, he breathed. Izuku released the breath he'd been holding and met the other's gaze once more. heart skipping at what he saw. Shoto's expression was so open that Izuku nearly melted. He seemed happy and awed, and almost like Izuku imagines he does whenever he's looking at the other boy. But that can't be right, because I'm hopelessly in love with him. Chapter 13. An Overdue Conversation. Shouta watched Izuku head into his new apartment with a sense of pride in his chest. This kid had just had a hell of a week, and yet continues to demonstrate how strong he is. Shouta is proud of him, but also wishes none of this had been necessary at all. The sound of a pen on paper accompanied by light humming is the only noise in the apartment now. It's soothing and familiar to Shouta. His husband has had this habit since they were in high school. He would hum without realizing any time they studied together. Nowadays, this habit mainly showed up when Hisashi graded papers for his classes. Shouta sighs and moves to join his husband on the couch, close enough to lay his head on his shoulder, seeking some comfort from the hectic day he had. Hisashi barely pauses in his humming or work, merely shifting to better accommodate him. This is something he loves about the man. He always knows what he needs. Before he knows it, his eyes start to slide closed, as the tension falls away from his body. A sudden knock on the door startles him awake, and Shouta shoots up, unaware of how long he had been asleep. "Easy, Sho, relax. I'm sure it's just one of the listeners," Hisashi soothes. Shouta merely nods in response and makes his way to the door. Exhaustion still seeped into his bones. Opening the door, he finds himself shocked that All Might, or Yagi as the man has insisted that they call him, is standing there wringing his hands together. He looks nervous. Good. He should be. "Yes?" Aizawa asks brusquely. He's too tired for small talk at this point. And frankly, he's a bit pissed at the other hero for not coming to him about this quirk business with Midoriya. He wanted to talk to him about this whole situation, preferably with a lot of yelling and a few stern lectures, but he digresses. "Ah, Aizawa. I do apologize for coming by unannounced. I was hoping to have a moment of your time, as well as Yamada's, if possible," Yagi says, voice soft. Shouta had a suspicion this may have something to do with his problem child, so rather than responding, he opens the door further and turns back into his apartment. Yagi eventually catches on and follows him inside, closing the door gently behind him. Shouta settles back on the couch next to his husband, who no longer is grading papers, and instead is glancing repeatedly between Shouta and Yagi with a questioning look in his eyes. Shouta shrugs and turns to Yagi, who has also taken a seat. No one speaks for a few moments until finally the former #1 hero is the one to break the tension, as he leans forward with his head bowed and his arms resting on his knees. "I would like to apologize," Yagi begins, eyes flitting up to briefly meet both Shota's and Hisashi's. And, genuinely, Shouta is a bit surprised by this. Yagi pauses after these words, and rather than cut in, Shouta stays silent and waits for him to continue, curious as to where this is going. "I am aware that young Midoriya has revealed the details of his quirk with you both today, and I have to say that a large part of me is relieved." Silence fills the room once again, until Shouta decides to break it this time. "I find that a bit hard to believe, given the effort you put in to hide this for so long," Shouta says lowly. He's still pissed that he was never informed, furious at the harm Midoriya could have potentially avoided had he known. His husband, sensing his anger, reaches over and gently takes his hand and gives a reassuring squeeze. "I know you have no reason to believe me on this, Aizawa, but it is the truth. I will admit that I had been driven by fear in the past, and you must know that I had good intentions at the time," Yagi stated. "Fear over what exactly?" Hisashi asks, speaking up for the first time. Shouta can see the way Yagi tenses slightly, but he answers the question. How familiar are you with the name All for One? Yagi asked. Wasn't that the villain you fought back in Kamino? Aizawa questioned, confused as to where this was going. Yagi nodded in response. That is correct. However, what most do not realize is that All for One and I were destined to cross paths. You see, as young Midoriya shared with you, he is the 9th holder of the quirk, Yagi said, and then proceeded to spend the next 20 minutes revealing the history of One for All and why All for One was now likely to come after Midoriya. Patience having run out once Yagi finished his tale, Shouta shot to his feet, enraged and glaring at the man. Are you telling me that one of the most dangerous villains of all time is coming after my kid because you passed a quirk onto him that this bastard wants? Shouta growled and gave Yagi no chance to respond before continuing. Am I right to believe that you passed a quirk onto a child, one who hadn't even made it to high school yet, signing him up for this predestined battle without ever telling him beforehand? Shota's voice was louder now, and his fists were clenched. Yagi at least had enough sense to look sheepish, confirming everything Shouta just said. What the hell is wrong with you? Don't you care at all for that boy? Shouta spat. Yagi's eyes widened at that. Of course I do, Aizawa. Yagi broke off, voice cracking before he cleared his throat and continued. Aizawa, that boy has the heart of a hero in him that beats so strong. You should have seen him the day he helped save young Bakugo. He rushed in, a young boy with no power at all, as heroes around him, including myself, merely stood by and watched. Yagi said proudly, with a hint of his own shame gracing his features. I knew from that moment that he deserved the chance more than anything to become a hero, and I knew that my quirk would help him to get to that goal. Shouta, still standing, felt a gentle hand take his wrist and pull him back to the couch to sit once again. But why not tell Midoriya ahead of time what he was walking into here? Hisashi asked, not unkindly. I think that is the part I'm struggling with the most. Never did I want this for him. At the time, I still had the ability to maintain my other form, and I had truly believed All for One to be dead from our fight years ago. I had no knowledge at the time that he was still alive, Yagi explained. You should have told me, Aizawa responded, frustration evident in his voice. Yagi went to interject, but Aizawa held a hand up to silence him. I understand to a degree why you did not tell Problem Child about a villain you thought to be dead back then. But eventually, you learned he was still alive. My class has been continuously targeted since the start of the year, and all this time it ties back to you and this quirk. Not only this, but at the very least I should have known that Midoriya was brand new to this quirk, Aizawa stated firmly. That kid is broken bones left and right, and had you informed me earlier, we may have been able to prevent the harm he was caused from this. Aizawa paused and took a deep breath. Moving forward, I will train him. I'm certified in quirk counseling, and I will spend the time with him that I should have from the start. But no more secrets, Yagi. Not about him. I can't protect him or any of my students to the best of my ability if I don't know the full story. Do I make myself clear? Yagi nodded solemnly. I understand, Aizawa. If it matters at all, I genuinely am relieved you now know. Same with you, Yamada. And I'm beyond grateful that he had the two of you to support him. It wasn't long after that Yagi finally left, assuring them both that if they had questions later on, he would be willing to answer anything he could. Shouta then found himself wondering how his problem child was settling in. Yagi had confirmed that Todoroki had been helping Midoriya, but it had been a couple hours now and he had yet to hear the boy leave. Shouta found himself gravitating to watch through the peephole at his front door. grumbling to himself at how late it was getting. What were those two doing over there? "Sho, will you relax, please? I can hear you pacing from here," Hizashi called out to him from their bathroom as he was getting ready for bed. "Why would Todoroki still be in there, Zashi? It doesn't make sense," Shouta grumbled. "I'm going over there," he announced. Suddenly, he heard footsteps padding across the apartment, and he turned to see Hizashi standing with a hand on his hip, eyes narrowed at him. "You are not going over there," Hizashi demanded firmly. Shouta went to argue, but was immediately cut off. "Nope, not happening, Sho. That boy has had enough stress today without you flying off the handle to rush in and give that poor Todoroki boy a shovel talk." Shouta should be shocked at how well Hizashi can read his intentions, but after years of being together, it's really not surprising at all. "I wasn't going to," he started, lying through his teeth. "Don't you try lying to me, Sho." Hizashi crossed his arms. His eyes, however, were filled with amusement, which only further frustrated Shouta. "Come on, come to bed and stop freaking out over your kids. Besides, those two are so hopelessly clueless, I'm sure you have nothing to worry about." Hizashi smiled. Shouta gave it some thought and remembered the elevator ride earlier that day, and how Problem Child seemed to be completely unaware of Todoroki's feelings. He relaxed a bit, still somewhat uncertain as to why he was so riled up to begin with over this. In all honesty, the kid probably needed the support from a friend right now after everything. So Shouta would let it go. For now. "Fine," he grumbled, and made his way to follow Hizashi to bed. It had been a hell of a day for everyone, and Shouta had to be up early tomorrow, as he had a purple-haired general studies student to meet with in the morning. Meanwhile, in Izuku's apartment, Shouta found himself lying back against an armrest while Izuku was fast asleep lying on his chest. Shouta was wide awake and unwilling to so much as breathe at times, so as not to disturb Izuku. He didn't want to risk anything ruining this moment, as he had his arms wrapped around him. Sure, he and Izuku have hugged in the past and been close to one another during class movie nights, but this was different. He could see Izuku's freckles up close, feel his body breathing against his own, could see the peace in his expression as he was succumbed to sleep. It was a level of warmth and comfort that Shouta couldn't believe he was experiencing, and Izuku, well, he clearly trusted Shouta. He trusted him enough to fall asleep on him, and that alone meant so much. Izuku had saved him. He saved Shouta from himself and his own self-destructive path. From the moment the words fell from his lips during the sports festival, Shouta knew. "It's your quirk, not his." Shouta knew then that he would spend the rest of his life by Izuku's side, in whatever way he was allowed. In a way, Shouta feared the coming days and how the class would interact with Izuku now that his innocence had been proven. Mostly, though, he was just worried for Izuku's sake. His friend had been so hurt by this past week, and Shouta hated every moment of it. He resolved to be there for him in any way he could. Izuku was strong and didn't need saving, but Shouta would protect him anyways. Because, despite not having had any clear examples of what it should look like or feel like growing up, Shouta knew well enough now to be certain. He was in love with his best friend. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 13 of Innocent Until Proven Guilty. Chapter 14 will be up next. I hope you all are still enjoying this one. I'd love to hear the thoughts and reactions you're having to this one. I combined these two chapters because they both kind of centered around All Might, his relationship with Izuku, as well as the conversations that take place between All Might and Aizawa and Yamada. And of course, there's a couple parallels between Izuku and Shoto's relationship and how they see each other. So I thought it would be nice to kind of put these together, especially since they were some shorter chapters. I'd love to hear what you're thinking, though. Keep fueling me, right, to write more. So drop your comments below for me. Let me know your thoughts. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.